Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons winning too hard against copy games. All right. So there's this huge thing that's happening. It's adventure. Abomination Vaults is an official Pathfinder adventure path, which is a great product they've had for many, many years. They've had a lot of success with it. But the newest one, right, that they're releasing is official Paizo content. uh, you know, Abomination Vaults Adventure Path 5e, and it says 5e in gigantic letters at the top. It's the largest script on the cover, right? And it's very embarrassing for Paizo. It's an embarrassment for every single one of their employees, and for their CEO. It's an embarrassment because it's a surrender. It's saying we're not a real competitor to Dungeons and Dragons anymore. And the way you know this is Dungeons and Dragons don't convert their content for anyone, right? Everyone converts their content to be compatible with Dungeons and Dragons, because Dungeons and Dragons is Queen of the Hill, bar none, right there, and that's just it. And basically, when Paizo surrenders, when Paizo goes to Dungeons & Dragons, puts one knee down, puts their swords down, puts their daggers in front, and said, we are surrendering, we are literally putting 5e on the cover of our products like some kind of scrub indie, mom and pop shop that, makes content on the weekends in their garage, right? Like, it's finished. It's over, right? So, you got this situation going, right? And the reality is, this is a very harsh reality for Dungeons and Dragons, right? This is a very harsh reality for Pathfinder and for Paizo, right? So let's talk about them winning too hard. I think this is a real concept, and we need to be very aware of this in Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm going to give the solution, right? So what is the problem? So first of all, Pathfinder defeated 5th edition. Pathfinder defeated 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Pathfinder 1e defeated Dungeons and Dragons 4e for about 1 month. For 1 month, right? Years and years ago. That number is now under contesting. There were some stories last year that was like maybe it wasn't real, that the metrics weren't real. Let's give it to them. Let's say they beat them for 1 month. Pathfinder was incredibly mocking and incredibly derisive. Both the Pathfinder, the company that created it, in my opinion, and the community was very derisive and mocking to Dungeons and Dragons in Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition down days. And I will never forget it, and I'm salty about it to this moment, right? And so from that perspective, I'm a little bit happy to see Paizo take their lumps, take their L, right? Take this loss, right? Sometimes you just take it. Right? That's the way the world is, right? So there's a little bit of joy. I have to admit, there's a little bit of joy in me for seeing this, right? However, that's my heart, right? My head says this is bad. This is a bad thing, right? So one, it is. In case you didn't know, this is not a good thing that Dungeons and Dragons only actual real competitor in the copy game space, because that's what Pathfinder is. Ain't nothing but a copy game, right? And it's just the most well executed copy game, right? So and Dungeons & Dragons has a lot of these little hang-ons who like to say, oh, we're Dungeons & Dragons. No, you are not. The name on your book is not Dungeons & Dragons. So don't you dare put the words Dungeons & Dragons anywhere near your copy product. It doesn't belong there. It does not deserve to be there. If you're playing some nonsense copy game, do not put the name Dungeons & Dragons on it or insist others think you're playing Dungeons & Dragons. You are not. Right? And this is proof, right? This is proof. This victory is proof that Dungeons & Dragons has actually won. It's not a construct. It's not a performative thing. It's not a gesture. It's real, right? Paizo is suffering right now because they have really been defeated, right? And they have really surrendered with this product, right? They're like, we need money and we need to stay alive, right? And the reason that I think they're doing this is they're surrendering so they can stay alive, right? And I think that's the case, right? They're doing this to get money to flow in. And if you need money to flow in, you put 5e on your product, and you take your subordinate place to the dominator, right? Which is Dungeons and Dragons, right? So here's the thing. Dungeons and Dragons is one. right? From my heart, I'm really happy about that. From my head, I know this is a problem. Dungeons & Dragons is winning too hard, right? There's a point, I play Magic the Gathering, and there's a lot of talk about strategy is a huge, strategy and tactics is huge in Magic the Gathering. And when you talk with players about strategy, you get some very interesting answers, right? And the reason why is these people know how to win and lose. They play hundreds, they play thousands of games, right? And they'll talk about cards and they'll say, that's win more, right? And they're like, you want to win. You don't want to win, right? And the reason why is when you win, there's just too many costs to it. When you absolutely dominate, right? It's like there was a sports there was like a football team that ran up the score like over 100 on some jank team that they were, and everybody's like, this is poor sportsmanship, right? And so and that's where we're entering with Dungeons and Dragons now. The wins are so significant and so hard against these copy games, these copy game companies, that it's embarrassing for these copy games at a level that when you look at it, you're like, that's winning too hard, right? So how does so this is a real problem. Dungeons & Dragons is winning too hard against these copy games and these copy game companies. I'll list them off: OSE, DCC, Index Card RPG, Knave, Five Torches Deep, you name, like Adventure Conqueror King, right? All these little like scrub games, they are getting defeated really badly, embarrassingly badly, right? And they can't put up any real numbers, right? And while it's fun to watch them fall, there's a point where you're like, okay, enough's enough, right? So how does Dungeons & Dragons fix this? So one, they've already started it. I think one of the best models is Frog God Games. I couldn't believe Frog God Games had actual, real, official Dungeons & Dragons content converting old content. That's a good start. Right? Frog God Games, very much a grognard copy game company, right? But the reality is, Dungeons & Dragons anointed them and said, you're going to have a real product. The D ampersand D symbol, not in red, is going to go on your product. That's a big deal. And I think there needs to be a lot more of that, right? So what do I mean by a lot more of that? So basically what I think is, for OSE, for DCC, right, I would not have said this before, but we have a problem. When you start winning so much that you look like a bully, you got to fix the problem, and that's exactly what's happening with Dungeons & Dragons right now. So I think Dungeons & Dragons needs to get their crew together and go, we need, like, first thing is start with Paizo and say, we accept your surrender, and they're not going to say that literally. The way they'll do it is they'll say, hey, we see you're hurting, you guys have been in the game for a long time, you're a real company with real artists, real writers, real layout, right? So we're going to help you. Right? And what they could do is they could say, okay, listen, get your best adventure path, and we're gonna make that our next official D&D content book, and then take Pathfinder content and make it D&D canon, right? And share the wealth with Pathfinder. And there is no need for there's like Dungeons & Dragons doesn't need this. This would be a grace offer. Right? This would be purely grace on the part of Dungeons & Dragons Wizards of the Coast. But they would say, we're going to make one of your adventure paths official Dungeons & Dragons, red ampersand on the side, goes right into our 3-month schedule, and we're going to do it this year. Like, we're going to announce it for the end of this year, and an official Pathfinder. And this would bring peace. This would bring peace, right? And it would just be a very gracious way for Dungeons & Dragons to say, we see you, relax, calm down, we'll help you make some money, and we will stop just virtually destroying you when you're in a bad spot, right? And not only could they do this, but then I think in addition to doing this, you could also do the same thing with Green Ronin Press. You can, with I would do this with one indie company a year. Go and get the best content made by an indie company and just reprint it with a conversion, right? And it wouldn't be a conversion because it'd be real D&D canon, right? And just bring in the best one indie content creator has a year as real D&D content. And this would stop the bleeding, right? This would be D&D going, hey, we know we're the winner, but we can win graciously. And And I think this is really important for them to do, because at this point we have reached a point where Dungeons & Dragons is just winning too hard, in my opinion. That's my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.